The first thing I noticed was her assistant's face. The moment I stepped into the office, her eyes went wide, so wide I thought they might fall right out of her head. She froze like a deer caught in headlights, her mouth opening and closing as if words were trying to escape but couldn't find their way out. She hadn't expected me. None of them had. And that was exactly why I came. I wasn't supposed to be there. She thought I was at work, buried under numbers and meetings. But instead, I showed up, carrying a bag of takeout in one hand and a smile in the other. Back then, I believed love was made of little things. Surprises, thoughtful gestures, quiet proof that you cared when nobody asked you to. That's why I came with lunch, her favorite, of course. I imagined her face lighting up, her eyes softening, the way she'd throw her arms around me and laugh about how I always knew what she needed before she even asked. That was the picture in my head. But the moment I opened her office door, that picture shattered. Because he was there. My brother. Her hands were knotted in his hair like she was terrified of letting him go. His palms pressed against her in places no one else should have ever touched. Their mouths slammed together as if they had been starving for years and finally allowed themselves to eat. And her, my girlfriend, my partner, my everything. She was straddling him in her office chair, the same chair I had built with my own 2 hands the night she got promoted. I remembered tightening the screws, wiping the sweat off my forehead, and telling her this chair would be her throne, her symbol of hard work and independence. Her future. Now it was nothing but a stage for betrayal. He saw me first. My brother's eyes snapped open, wide with guilt, fear, maybe even shame. But hers, they stayed shut. She was lost in him, too lost to notice me standing right there. She didn't even stop. Not until I spoke. Just 5 words, cold, sharp, final. Don't bother coming home tonight. I said it without shaking. My voice didn't crack. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Then I closed the door behind me, not like a storm slamming shut. Not like a man furious and wild. No, I closed it the way you'd close a fridge when you forgot the milk at the store. Calm, ordinary, almost too casual. But inside me, something had snapped in half. It wasn't fire that burned in me. It wasn't rage. It was ice. Cold. Bitter, suffocating ice. It felt like falling into a frozen lake, lungs screaming, body going numb, your heart pounding so hard you think it will crack open. That's what betrayal felt like. That night, I ignored her calls, dozens of them, one after another, lighting up my phone until the battery nearly gave out. I watched the screen glow in the dark and never touched it once. The next day, the same. Messages filled my inbox, long ones. Apologies wrapped in carefully chosen words. Excuses written so neatly, you'd think she had practiced them for months. But I couldn't get past the second line of any of them. My eyes blurred, my chest tightened, and I'd throw the phone aside. I stayed alone, not at our home. Not at the place full of memories I couldn't stand to breathe in anymore. I stayed in my other apartment, the one nobody knew about. Not even her. Everyone thought it was just for work. A rental I used when things got too busy. She believed that story too, especially her, but the truth was darker. I kept it because I've always known people wear masks. They smile, they promise, they pretend. And when they think nobody's watching, that's when the mask slips. That's when you see who they really are. I had always felt it in my gut that someday I'd need a place to escape. And now, here I was, sitting in the shadows of the apartment no one else knew existed. I dug through our phone plan. She never changed her habits. She was too confident, too sure I'd never look, but I looked. Call history, messages, location pings, and there it was, his number. Hidden under the name of a co-worker, clever, almost impressive, but not clever enough, because I'd seen that number before. It was the same number saved in my mother's phone. The same number she used to check in on my brother when he was in rehab. My brother. The man who once sobbed in my arms, begging for forgiveness after tearing our family apart. The same brother she swore she couldn't stand. The one she said she barely tolerated. And yet, here he was, her secret, her lover, her choice. I didn't explode. I didn't throw things or scream or demand answers. Instead, I wrote everything down, every call, every meeting, every suspicious lunch that went just a little too long. I became my own detective, my own judge, my own witness. Piece by piece, I built the puzzle. Then I went further. I requested the building logs from her office. She had forgotten something important. She had used my name to land that job. She never realized I still had backdoor access to everything. One by one, her alibis fell apart. The nights she claimed to be working late? Lies. The weekends she swore she spent with friends? Lies. The business trips? Lies stacked on lies. Every excuse she gave crumbled like dominoes falling in a perfect line. And at home? She came back to silence. I was there, sitting across from her. I smiled sometimes, even cracked small jokes. We cooked dinner together. We watched TV like nothing had changed. We even slept in the same bed. I never touched her. Not once. And she never asked why. Because guilt doesn't need questions to grow. It doesn't need arguments or shouting matches. It survives in silence. And in our house, silence had begun to live like an uninvited guest, hovering between us at the dinner table, lying awake in our bedroom, riding along in the car. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself she loved me, and that was enough. But every time I looked into our daughter's face, the doubt sharpened like a blade. Her eyes were mine, deep, familiar, a mirror of the boy I used to be, but her smile curved in a way that always felt foreign. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even hers. It was his. At least, that was the thought I could no longer silence. Quietly, without warning, I began the process. DNA tests, swabs, signatures, legal envelopes. It felt mechanical, but my heart pounded with every step. 3 long weeks passed. Every day felt heavier than the last. And then one morning, it came, delivered overnight, stamped confidential, sealed in an envelope that weighed more than the world itself. I held it in my hands for hours before I opened it. I waited until the house was quiet. No one watching, no witness to my undoing. When I finally tore it open, my breath froze. Just one sheet of paper. Just one line that shattered everything. 0% probability of paternity. It felt like a hammer through glass. My world didn't just crack, it collapsed. The next morning, she stood in the kitchen flipping pancakes, humming like it was just another day. I walked in, calm, almost too calm, holding the folded report in my hand. Without a word, I placed it beside her coffee cup. She glanced at it casually at first, then again slower. Her hands trembled. Her fork slipped and clattered against the plate. She didn't pick it up. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, she whispered, voice fragile as broken glass, "Wait, just wait." But I didn't. I walked toward the door, my steps steady, my chest burning. I paused once, just long enough to turn back and say, "You're not very good at hiding things. Neither is he." Her face collapsed, and her sobs followed me down the hall. But it wasn't her crying that stayed with me. It was the silence that came after, the silence of someone realizing the damage wasn't just done. It was documented. 3 days later, the news broke. CEO resigns amid internal investigation. Affair and nepotism, scandal rocks. Company, exclusive, anonymous tip. Exposes years of misconduct. Her world burned in front of millions of eyes. The empire she and her lover had built toppled in a single week. She lost everything. So did he. And the truth. They hadn't just fallen from power. They had been pushed because I had spent months quietly, methodically, building a case. Every late night email, every office swipe record, every GPS ping, every timeline of their secret meetings. I had it, all organized, polished, gift-wrapped for the press. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I didn't demand money or alimony or custody. I didn't want the house. I didn't want revenge in court. I wanted something cleaner, sharper. I wanted them to rot in the ruins they had created together. I wanted them to choke on their own lies. 2 weeks later, She sent me one final message. Why did you wait? Why didn't you say anything when you knew? I stared at her words, my fingers hovering above the keys. For a long time, I said nothing. Then, slowly, I typed my reply. Because silence is the sharpest blade. And I hit send. The truth about betrayal, people. Like to say the worst part of betrayal is the moment it happens, but they're wrong. The worst part comes after. That quiet, lonely moment when you realize you ignored every sign, every instinct, every whisper of doubt, because you wanted to believe. You wanted to believe the person you loved could never hurt you, but they could. They just needed the opportunity, and I gave it to her, gift wrapped in trust. I don't miss her. Not even the version of her I thought I loved. That woman doesn't exist anymore. She died the day I opened that office door, and the last word I ever gave her still hangs heavy in the air. Tonight, it will stay the last word she ever gets from me. Expanded reflections, cinematic layering. Sometimes I replay it all in my head. Not the affair, not the lies, but the silence between us. The dinners where she smiled just a little too wide. The nights she came home smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine. The way her phone lived face down on the counter, as if even the screen itself carried shame. I could have confronted her. I could have asked. But what good are words when the truth has already settled in your bones? Silence became my weapon. While they thought they were hiding in shadows, I was building a spotlight, and when it turned on, it burned them alive. Betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers. It whispers through the quiet moments when someone avoids your eyes. It whispers in the laugh that feels rehearsed, the kiss that feels hollow, the hug that doesn't linger. And sometimes, the sharpest blade isn't anger. It isn't revenge. It's silence. Because silence doesn't just cut deep. It leaves the wound open, forever reminding them of the truth they tried so hard to bury. And that's the truth I walked away with. Not her. Not the house. Not the empire, just silence.